All right, the first bit of news that we'll cover tonight was a tiny little press conference, I guess if you want to call it that Mike Zimmer gave to some reporters via Zoom. He said a couple things that were somewhat diplomatic, but at least it was some breadcrumbs that we could seize upon. Ron, one of the first things that he talked about was an answer regarding Irv Smith Jr. And when asked about his role or his possibility for a breakout year, as most people forecast, he basically said, I don't see his role changing whatsoever. And then he pivoted to talk about Tyler Conklin, which is fine and dandy. But I think I have Irv Smith pegged for a target heavy season. And if we're just going to replicate 2020 with Irv as the frontier guy, I didn't really foresee that they would split it like Rudolph and Irv kind of did. So am I misinterpreting that? And Irv will get oodles of targets?
So I do think that it might not have been what he expected to say, because I think everyone's considering Irv as the primary guy at tight end. But I think where he's elevating Conklin in the sense that we do a lot of two tight end sets, and Conklin emerged last year as a reliable option, as that second tight end. So I think that's more of what he's alluding to, that whereas we all expect an uptick in Irv Smith's use, but now it's Conklin will be a major factor as well because of all the two tight end sets that we use.
Okay. Sally, what say you on Irv Smith?
I kind of took it the same way. I don't really think it's really a talking point. I don't feel the need to rip Zimmer's press conferences this early in the year. But yeah, I think that's what he was alluding to, is that it's, we already know his capabilities. I'm sure he will have way more targets, but Zim doesn't really think with that offensive mind. So that's how I took it.
All right, well, we'll talk that talking point up to bad show writing on behalf of your friendly neighborhood hosts.
You wanted me to disagree and rip them apart?
I'll take it.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it, Joe.
It might be a little devil's advocate-y. I do like that Sal said I'm not going to rip Zimmer's press conferences ... this early into the season as if it's just a foregone conclusion. I kind of think the same thing, to be honest, but I also think that looking back, I know it's a different Kubiak running things, but historically, the elder Kubiak, the idea of him being a 2 or 3 tight end set running OC is true, but it never really materialized into multiple pass catching tight ends. But he would always default to the tight end that could block better than catch. So I went back to like the 90s and looked at the percentages and how many balls went to each tight end, and it never was this thing like like the Patriots had pre-murder. And so I think that it is, if you take that into the equation, it is a little interesting to hear that, especially with the fact that the Vikings don't have that many balls to go around to begin with Thielen, Jefferson, Dalvin, and then he's saying that, well, I don't expect Irv to improve much, but this, Conklin might. To me, with a limited amount of balls going around, the fact that they don't usually throw the ball to 2 tight ends that often, I think there is something there, outside of the other big talking point, which is Zimmer is just really not great at press conferences. He always tends to just ruin somebody's self-esteem early in the season, which I guess is kind of part of his charm, I would put it. But I think there's something there.
Yeah, when he said he doesn't see his role changing whatsoever, my knee jerk, and I'm glad Sally's here to reel me back in a little bit, is that he just sees it a cookie cutter of last year. And last year, Irv was decent, but it certainly wasn't this breakout that we hope to see this year with Rudolph out of the way. Hey, Bryant, we've seen very early in the OTA stuff, a couple of the offensive line combinations are the dudes that we had last year that didn't play very well. So I'm curious as to, I know you weren't there for your rookie year because of the holdout, but is it pretty standard for rookies, even first rounders that have to really claw their way up the OTA depth chart?
OTA is kind of where they get a chance to kind of get an idea of where they are level wise. But on first rounder, they normally just throw you in there, just throw you in the fire to see what you can do. And it's up to you to kind of lose the position. So, I mean, that's pretty much how it is.
Okay, yeah, we're doing a little bit opposite. We only have the one first rounder with Darisaw, but he and Wyatt Davis are not on, the first team reps, which isn't that big of a deal, but it's a little kooky because it's not like we have some hot shit offensive line that people need to prove themselves. So it's backward there. Let's see what else dribbled out of that press conference. Sally, Zimmer said the proverbial, I haven't talked to Danielle Hunter, also in that little soundbite. Which wasn't comforting because we'll have a judgment day in 2 weeks, that if he doesn't show up, he will be confirmed that he is indeed starting some sort of holdout. So are you spooked, Sally, by this?
No, not necessarily. I don't really think even if he did talk to him, he would say, because I think he knows that's the can of worms that he's going to open with everybody, but especially Chris Tomlinson, his buddy. He's going to be asked about it every single day until we know something. And he already knows he's going to be asked every day if he doesn't show up. So I don't think he'd be forthcoming with the information anyway.
Okay. Joe, what's your take on this Danielle stuff? We haven't heard from you, at least verbally, on the Danielle stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Sally's right. I mean, he's such a cognitive dissonance of saying way too much about one thing and then not saying anything about anything else. It's the strangest thing. But for me, honestly, and if people don't really read my stuff, I'm a very panicky sort of Vikings fan, and I think that any percentage that isn't zero that Danielle Hunter doesn't play for the Vikings next year, it should terrify Vikings fans. I mean, the idea of the arguably, I don't think it's an argument, the best under 25 edge in the history of the NFL, not playing for either a portion of the season or holding up for the entire season or ending up on another team, it would be a catastrophe. Everything that we're talking about, all this excitement that doesn't seem to translate on a national level, is predicated on a lot of assumptions, with guys coming back healthy, but what they did on the interior of the defensive line and Danielle coming back. And if he's not back, it just deflates the whole thing. And so, yeah, I'm a little freaked out about it. I'm not going to lie. And I think that they probably have had a lot of conversations about it, but there hasn't been any positive updates, and therefore we're not hearing about it, which I think is a negative.
Okay. So Ron, here's my thought. If indeed there's any semblance of Hunter being traded, not being on this team, even if he's traded for like 2 first-round picks, the defense, we saw last year what we thought a patchwork defense might be able to do. And I thought it would be about mediocre, but indeed it was not. It was towards the very bottom of the league. So because Weatherly and Wanham are the options on the right-hand side of the line, it spooks me to all hell that Hunter wouldn't be on the left side, because to Joe's contention, everything is predicated on having a little bit of pass rush, and that's sponsored by Danielle Hunter. It's not going to be sponsored by the warhorse Weatherly by himself. His success depends on Hunter being there. So, and Everson Griffin is still, unsigned, but even bringing him back isn't going to be a fix-all. So do you have anything different, Ron, than our anxieties over the Hunter stuff?
No, I wish I could kind of give a voice of reason and hope for it. But I mean, to Brian's mentioned it before, where in defense things can be going bad and one player can make a play, and Hunter is the guy in that front line to do that. Now, if I'm taking the optimist approach and looking at it, say if as Hunter not on the team, or isn't there week 1, our defense is markedly better than what it was last year. So
sure,
yes, it will be. Like, there will be an improvement, but you're banking on getting that guy you're going to roll in and he's going to get double-digit sacks and be an impact. He's not going to be a Lance Johnstone type that we've talked about before, where just gets after the quarterback and that's all he does. He's going to be a difference maker for himself as well as the rest of the D-line. So you hope that there is talks between him and his agent, or the Vikings and his agent, going back and forth, and that it's not at a stalemate. I mean, I look at it as it's hard to have leverage when you missed an entire year off of a neck injury and not knowing your health, but you're also, a 25, 26-year-old in the prime of your career who's been dominant. So your leverage is yourself. So I understand, him taking care of himself and wanting to be paid higher than Leonard Floyd. Like, I get that. So,
Yeah.
but we'll just hope and pray that he is back and all the pieces fall in place, and we'll be all right.
Doesn't it feel though like every variable possible for the Vikings in this scenario is bad?
Yeah.
The amount of money he should have made pre-injury, the fact that injury tells him my career could be over in a play.
Right.
The Vikings don't have very much money.
They have 16 million now. So after the June 1st designation.
But then they also have the risk of paying him and then the injury.
Right.
Yeah.
That to me is the bigger concern about paying him.
It's bad all around. And then I wonder what's the deal with Griffin. And I know last year he was kind of like
Went
mad
AWOL
that
a little bit.
Zimmer said he was great, not good, not great or whatever. But it's like, why don't they can bring him back at least as a contingency plan?
Well, I think there's the mental instability concern there, and I don't mean that in a rude way. We know that that's been an issue in the past, and I'm sure that that's a concern for anyone who may sign him. So probably still waiting to see how that's going.
If you're at home or on the road listening to the show and you're trying to swallow the fact that we're going to have to pay Hunter on a iffy bill of health, the only way to rationalize it, and you better get to doing it, is that we got to discount the past 2 years. That's the only way to get around it. It's going to take a leap of faith, and you just got to do it. Otherwise, we're going to have a Diggsian gig where you hope that you get a Jefferson in return. Some of us think that's the norm now, but it's not. I don't think that it's going to end up in a trade or a big nasty situation. I think it'll be an ordinary, like, oh, cool, pops up on my phone that they signed him long term. But you can't really have it both ways. You can't be upset that we have to pay him now when we were happy that we paid him, peanuts comparatively.
And in a way, I would actually say the Vikings are in a favorable spot as far as contract goes, because if it is strictly about money and Hunter wants to get paid, they have the cap space now to add that for this year, and then next year the cap is going to jump significantly. So so for Hunter's case, if he were to wait and play out this year and then ask for a new deal, he'll get even more money because just simple economics, things are going to go up. But if he's playing the stubborn card and wants to get paid now because he might be worried about his health, that may in turn be a benefit for the Vikings down the road, because now next year, instead of paying him 30 million, it's going to be like 20 million. So it's glass half full type looking there, I guess. But
hey, B-Mac, so tell us emotionally what goes on during a holdout. You had one very early in your career. Are you on pins and needles? You just chilling? What's the deal?
You're trying to stay in shape, but you really never know when you possibly could sign. It's always any day. So you're really just stationed in one place and kind of checking with your agent every day to kind of see like with the conversation, how the conversation's been going. For me, I kind of knew that we were far apart at a certain point.
Yeah.
And then I knew when conversations were heating up. And then I also knew about, the collusion part of it too. So then I knew that things would get done a little faster. So, but in the most part, you're just trying to stay in shape and just do things to kind of be ready. Because I think they played, when I came into town, they were traveling. I came in town like on a Saturday, and they were leaving on a Saturday to go to Tampa Bay that year. And I stayed there with the strength coach, and we did a bunch of conditioning drills and things like that. And I did that the whole weekend, and then I just jumped right into, the flow of things when everybody came back Monday.
Okay.
Did you have to worry about back then, the workouts as far as so I'm using Jawan James as a example this year. He's a Broncos tackle who they signed handsomely a few years ago, and he got hurt working out away from the team facilities. So, and he's out for the year, so they cut him. They don't have to pay him for that. Did you have to worry about any of that? Obviously you weren't signed, but if you would have gotten hurt or something in any of your workouts, would that have hindered being able to sign anything, or how does that work out?
Definitely, because now I'm damaged goods for the most part coming in, and so you still had to kind of still be smart in your workouts. And I wasn't working out, just me and a trainer. Wasn't trying to do anything with anybody or be physical or out there really doing drills. It was just I just had to stay in more or less conditioned shape.
Okay. You wouldn't have gotten that one penny more.
Honestly, it's hard to mimic football shape.
Right.
It's very hard. It's you really got to play yourself to a certain degree into shape for football, because your neck like, with the helmet on, you have to use carrying that. It's like a lot of just different things. So it's hard to be in football shape right away.
Right.
Can I chime in on this before we move on? Because
Sure.
and this isn't directed towards anyone on this panel. This is more for the things that I'm seeing online. And Brian, I would like your perspective on this, but and Ron, this isn't towards you because I know this isn't how you meant this. But I think as sports fans, not just Vikings fans, we tend to dehumanize athletes that are a hobby for us. And it's easy for us to say, oh, well, you didn't play last year, so you need to prove yourself. Or you already make X amount of money. What's the difference? And so we love these players when they are performing well for us, but then we criticize them every single time that they look out for their own self-interest. And I think if we look at Daniil, I mean, he's 26 years old. He came into the league as the youngest player in the league at under 21. He's never missed an entire season of an injury at any stage of his career. To sit there on the sideline and have all that free time to think and get a new perspective on your future, what's important. And a neck injury is nothing to joke about. Any injury that you've missed an entire season is most likely going to have lasting effects on your life. But this is your neck. And that's really serious. And I think that he has to look out for his future because that has to be what's important for him. And it's nothing personal against the Vikings. It's nothing personal. Probably I want to be number one paid. Maybe that was the case before the injury, but I think we just all need to do a better job at thinking, at having empathy towards these people, that it doesn't matter how much money they make, they're people.
Right. And that's what
they're putting their body at risk. And actually, probably before you joined the podcast, Sally, I spoke on that before because I said, when we, as the athlete, try to make a business decision, a lot of fans look at us like, oh, what are you doing, this and other. But when the team decides to cut you, and that's the business decision on their part, the fans are okay with it. So it's like, I never understood that part because either way, it's a business decision from the athlete or from the team. But when it's ever the athlete making a business decision for them and their livelihood and their family, we're always looked at or shunned upon like we're doing something wrong.
Right.
But when the team makes a business decision and says, I'm ready to get rid of you and bring somebody else in, it's like, oh, well.
And you have a very short career to consider. I mean, you're lucky if you play 10 years. That's abnormal in the league.
Well, the average is 10 and a half. That's what you got to realize.
Yeah, and that's
you have to make the best decisions for you at that time. And so I totally respect whatever he does or any other player does in that position.
Right.
So I just think that we're going to see a lot of bad, negative things said. So for anyone who's listening, please look at it from someone else's point of view other than your selfish self.
Yeah, and that's where I said, like, it's like the players are their assets. They have to look out for themselves. So I completely get that. But yeah, to your point, it's like what's going on in the NBA with fans. The second they're allowed back and they act like jackasses and don't know how to act like freaking human beings. So I hate how like all that like happens. And then I go back to the Le'Veon Bell situation where when he held out and people are ripping him like, oh, you're leaving $16 million on the table, whatever. But from his standpoint, he could get hurt. He could tear his ACL and hurt any future earnings. So I think in that standpoint, he benefited because he sat out a year and he then got his money that he wanted. The Steelers benefited because they didn't have to pay him and then they were able to roll the dice. So there are times, like for me, I always get in the mold of when it's millionaires versus billionaires, I'll side with the millionaires because if the players aren't getting the money, we sure as hell ain't. So I could care less as long as the team can afford it. As like it goes back to like the Cousins contract. I don't care. The team seems to be doing just fine. Like they're not, like it hasn't hurt them from signing anyone else. So the contract should never be a problem. So I sure as hell hope that there's no negative things about Hunter because other than the contract, he's been nothing but like just a model citizen. Like
there's gonna be though. I mean, you guys remember, was it last year when Dalvin was holding out for things that weren't really things yet, like because of the way they changed things in that back in the day, if you held out that money that you were fined, that you would get back once you signed your new contract, but they took that away. So essentially, if Dalvin would have held out for I think like 28 or 29 days, it would have been his entire year's salary. So that's why like at Easter, it was like Dalvin's holding out, and it's like from what? He wasn't really doing anything. It was a negotiation tactic, and almost every comment that we got on the sites, on social media, was like, cut him. He's selfish. Yep. he's a diva, and it's just like, well, what? So
Right.
Always the
I
narrative.
fully expect it.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
happen. Now, I want to say that it seems over the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years that there's seedlings of player empowerment. It's not fixed, and there's certainly not universal empathy. But for instance, before Deshaun Watson was revealed to be very shady, or Russell Wilson wanted to be traded, they weren't panned nationally as selfish pricks. It was, oh yeah, Russ is always getting sacked. He's been sacked more than anybody in the last 9 years. No wonder he wants out. Or
Well, it
Watson.
depends on who you ask. So.
Well, yeah, the hometown teams probably aren't happy, but nationally, it wasn't. Look at this bastion of selfish quarterbacks. It was like, oh, cool that they can speak out now and they can want to write their own, destination.
Right, but then there's a lot of, depending on the player that does it, like with Watson, for example, and again, pre any of these allegations, like he demands a trade, and Brett Favre, for example, like Bryant, your former teammate, he comes and rips him apart and says he shouldn't be asking for a trade and whatnot. JJ Watt then comes out and demands to be released, and not a damn word from Favre. Like, wonder what the play is there. So.
Yeah, head scratcher. That's actually the last thing we talked about on my podcast/radio show. 20 minutes before I came on here was with my co-host Joe, like where he saw the player empowerment thing going, and whether or not it was just kind of an extension of the fact that NFL players have the worst collective bargaining agreement of any pro sport.
Absolutely.
And it reminds me of something that I would love BMAC's insight on, but Chris Kluwe, the punter, came on my podcast a lot back in the day, and we talked about the rookie symposium and how they have these like business seminars of guys trying to sell young guys who just got money, like, invest in my restaurant, and it just seemed odd. But he told me that the reason the NFL has the worst CBA is that the most players can't afford to even risk a strike because they live paycheck to paycheck. And so the owners know that, and that's why they basically treat them like crap, because there's no leverage outside of that Keanu Reeves movie for some sort of strike. And I don't know if that's been your experience in dealing with the owners or CBA.
I agree because you have a wide range of salary of what people are getting paid. You have people who just came in. You have people who are free agents and happy to be here and want to work their way up. You have people who might have been top draft picks who might have a little cushion. So everybody's not in the same place financially, and everybody's not willing to take that risk. Like it's a gamble, kids a gamble. So everybody's not willing to take that risk because they rather should, make things secure for their family and their future.
Yeah.
And the other piece that I never quite understand on the selfishness part of fans or, just naysayers is that a lot of these men have this skill set that's going to make them a lot of money, and they have one opportunity to do it. And hopefully for them, that spans 12 years. But in reality, to Brian's point, it's 3.5 years. So they've got to go grab money. It is not that they're incapable of doing other stuff, but to the level at which they're going to earn, $800,000 minimum or whatever, when they get done, they might just be a regular project manager like me. And so there's a discrepancy in the prices. So it should be all the power to everybody. I don't care if you're Aaron Donald or, Dakota Dozier. They should be fighting to get every paycheck, because most of them only have this 3-year span to grab about 500,000 there, 700,000 there. And when we think about athletes overpaid, we're just thinking about the headliners. Like, well, God, this guy is making Kirk Cousins money. They all make that. No, they don't.
But it's also all about perspective, right? Like, what is a normal paycheck for Bryant McKinnie is not a normal paycheck for me.
Correct.
So I don't know his lifestyle, his spending habits. That's his perspective on his money. So you can't people compare these apples to oranges. Like, oh, I'd be so happy if I made half that. It's not about that, for one. And for two, how would these Joe schmucks feel if somebody was telling them in their line of work, you don't deserve a raise. You don't deserve a raise. You were sick last week.
Right.
You don't deserve a raise. You need to work harder and do this and this. You have to think about it. This is their job. Compare it to your job. How your work performance, you perform well, you want more money.
Right. And
Right?
like when's the last time, like, this again goes back to the players and how like us fans, and I'm lumping us all in, even though like I know we might not feel this way, but the majority of fans like have their own opinions when a player holds out or asks for more money, but they always come out of the woodworks. Oh, this guy's whatever, like, and thug gets thrown around a lot, like, or whatever, for black athletes and that dumb stuff. But when's the last time that a fan has criticized a coach for leaving for a head coaching job for a better position somewhere else? No one rips Kevin
I
Stefanski
never
because
hear it.
because
Now I think
oh,
about
he
it.
left after 10 or a decade plus here to go be the head coach of the Browns. No one once ripped him. Like, so I don't get where, like, why that, like, as a fan they feel like they could do that. And again, it goes back to the NBA where fans think that they can do whatever they want and not get in trouble or not do whatever. But I think everyone just needs to have that like self-realization of, like, yes, like the team's here for our entertainment, but the players aren't here for like our individual entertainment and for us to like whatever. Like, we can wish players the best. Like, Diggs is a perfect example. Like, he just clearly wanted a new like outlook on things. So I don't hold that against them at all. And fortunately for us, it worked out that we got Jefferson. So it's, yeah, like Sally, to your point, it's everyone, they worry about their own self and, never spend another, like I always run by the philosophy, never spend another man's money or tell them how they can and can't make money.
You know what drove me the craziest of multiple things when people started running Randy Moss out of town when I was in college? It's when he was being filmed at Winter Park by a fan, and because he got fined for spraying that ref with that water bottle, and straight cash homie, and people were somehow upset. They were like, people in Minnesota are working class and work really hard, and $10,000 is a lot of money, and for him to just say that rich people don't write checks is such a slap in the face. And I was like, do I have to move? Like, what is going on? They're just looking for things to get mad about. There's nothing offensive about that. And now it's like on all this merch and all these Vikings fans like it, but people back then
him
didn't.
now.
Yeah.
But they couldn't wait for him to be gone, but now
oof.
He's a god to them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it drives me crazy.
I play when I want to play. When it's like, you go run 40-yard sprints every single time and tell me how you wanna feel running routes.
That was taken out of context too.
Yeah.
They asked him why he played better in primetime games, what the motivation was, and he said that wasn't it. It's the motivation comes from my inside of me. I play when I want to play, not because I'm Al Michaels is talking about.
I think the numbers dictate that. If that was Randy Moss dog in it, like, that's a hell of a career.
I've always said the same thing. Like, yikes.
Yeah, I think on the idea that athletes should get paid what they're paid and be content with it, we almost have like a Roman Empire feel. Like, we truly think that they're gladiators that are just there to do one thing, and that's kill tigers and then go home and
are you not entertained?
Right.
And then we just don't have a problem when the owners get richer and then Stefanski gets promoted. It's like, oh yeah, well, good job. So
Brian, how is that lifestyle, or like from a player standpoint at the college ranks? Because I've always said the NCAA is the biggest sham out there. Like, they're like, as far as how much money they make and how everything's funded by boosters and everything. Like, as the fans, do they kind of treat players the same way there, knowing that it's a short stint?
No, there, I feel like the fans really, it's more to me like a family. It's not business.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because people aren't being traded in and out of that locker room. You're like kind of there for that 4 years or 5 years.
You're not getting paid.
It's a little more different. Yeah, you're not getting paid. And even if you get a summer job, you can only make so much because they don't want nobody trying to no type of favoritism. So it's like, you're limited on what you can make. You don't get no money.
Yeah. Those Ohio State guys got free tattoos and almost lost their whole career like 10 years ago. It's nuts.
It's selective capitalism. We want to preach gung-ho capitalism, but not when we want to manipulate it. So,
ooh.
All right, Joe. I wrote a piece for Purple PTSD a couple days ago about
which one?
Oh yeah, there's a bunch. There was a gambling site that had the Vikings, Cardinals, and Steelers all at the same percentage for Super Bowl win percentage. I think it was plus 4,000.
Yeah.
Do you, sir, consider those three teams equals in terms of win projections and playoff aspirations?
Okay, so I am known around the Vikings world as maybe a wet blanket or that I'm negative for effect or blah, blah, blah. And so I have said since the draft, because they did things in this draft that I wanted them to do, that I'm on the positive Vikings bandwagon. No one will sit by me, but that's fine. So I took the time before this glorious show to write down all the teams' odds, because a lot of people don't understand, myself included up until I did this, what these numbers mean, which essentially the best odds are KC at plus 500, which I think means
If you bet
100,
500 to win 100.
wait, you bet 500 to get
have to-
100?
If it's a plus, yeah, you have to bet 500 to win 100.
I thought it was
Or
backwards.
no, or is it the other way
It's
around?
the other way around. You
Okay.
bet
Oh,
100,
sorry.
you
Yep,
win
sorry, yeah.
500.
I was gonna say that's the worst deal ever, because one of them 17,500 for the I was like, wow, 18 grand to get $100. But if you look at where they are, which is pretty low down on the list, I think they're in the late teens, early 20s. They're the Cards, Steelers, Patriots have better odds than they do. The Dolphins, none of the, I don't know. They just, I don't think if I'm being honest, they should be on this list at all. They should be over here, because I don't think they're ever going to win a Super Bowl from an emotional standpoint. But if you're looking at their roster and what they were able to do last season with a patchwork defense that had a ton of injuries, so on and so forth, an offensive line that somehow found a way to get worse. They invested in that in a way that I think is going to be very impactful. I just don't understand some of the stuff like this. I mean, people talk about Russell Wilson's season last year, and he did have kind of a cool off period towards the end, but it was a career year, MVP level. If you look at his stats versus Cousins' stats, they're almost identical. 105 QB rating, same very similar PFF ratings. Both had 13 interceptions. Cousins had more yards, and then I think Wilson had 3 more touchdowns, and they won a couple more games. But I think people have this idea of Cousins being this anchor, when in reality, if you look at what he was asked to do last year, which was keep the opposing offense off the field for as long as possible, because our defense is bad. So you have to dink and dunk and have 10 play drives, but you also have to score a touchdown on those drives. Otherwise, you end up like in the Tampa game with the crazy time of possession, and you lose because you miss a couple field goals and you don't score any touchdowns. I think honestly, with any semblance of protection, the level of protection that Russell Wilson had last year, from a pass protection standpoint, mid-teens. The defense bouncing back, Danielle Hunter being there. I really do think this team could make a significant run in the playoffs. Where they're grouped and what I read nationally, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I think that's just because nobody likes Cousins, I guess, and they just think he'll never get them there, even though he's the second or third most accurate quarterback in NFL history on all 3 levels of, like he makes every throw very accurately. He's lethal in the red zone. I really don't get it. So yes, I think it's a really dumb bet. If I thought my car could last getting to northern Iowa, I would go down there and place that $100 bet to win.
I think what they do,
$3,000.
the national, I think the national folks, they take the standings from last year and they go 7-9, and they go Cousins. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
8-9, 9-8 sounds good to me. Sally's shaking her head. If you're listening, not watching, Sally, hit us with it.
Well, I kind of, I need to do a better job at hiding my facial reactions. I guess first I was making that face because I misunderstood the question, but I thought we were talking about those other 2 teams, if we thought it was an accurate thing for them. And then also, I've never met this version of Joe before, so I'm just a little confused.
Yeah, I'm usually in the bushes outside your
I'm
house.
like, who's talking? Who is this?
He liked the draft.
Yeah, I guess so. So we are talking about the Steelers, right? Real quick.
Sure.
So honestly, with the Steelers, when you compare the Vikings to the Steelers, I think it's almost kind of insulting to have them at 8.5. Because if you remember the Steelers last year, they did go 12-0, but then they lost 5 out of their 6 last games. And if you think about their division, Baltimore already has been good. You've got the Browns trending way up, Kevin Stefanski's Browns. And then I would be surprised if the Bengals don't make some improvements as long as Burrow is okay. And the Bengals beat them on Monday Night Football. And then the Browns beat them in the wild card round. So and the Steelers do have the hardest schedule in the NFL. So I would be honestly surprised if they get to 8. So I think the Vikings will be higher than them at the end.
Okay. Ron, what about the Vikings sharing bed space with the Cardinals and the Steelers for Super Bowl odds?
So yeah, I guess it's kind of in that same mold of, I think those two teams are, I would say they're very comparable in the sense of, like, I'm not saying team structure or anything, but what they have to overcome to be successful. Like obviously the Cardinals, like the Vikings, aren't the favorites in the division, but they're a team, like, Vikings are the youngest team in the league, and trending upward. They're obviously adding JJ Watt and, in adding some other talent to that defense. Their defense is going to get better as well. And then adding Rodney Hudson as a center to Kyler Murray is going to be huge, because their offensive line, I don't think it's possible, but I think it was worse than the Vikings last year, because they've just been bad. So in the sense that, again, I don't care to look at what the odds are at this point, because I see the Vikings being in the conversation to compete for the division. If Rodgers is jettisoned from the Packers, the Vikings would be, in my mind, the favorite to win the division. And then, again, it's how are the odds all broken up at that point. But I think as it stands now, I think they'd be in that mix to make the playoffs as a wild card. Whether that means 9 or 10 wins, I'm not sure, but I think that they're trending upward.
Yeah, I think right now it's 11-6. If the season was going to start today, that'll tumble by at least 2 or 3 losses if Danielle Hunter is not on this team, and if Rodgers is not on the Packers, then it's going to spike by 2 or 3 wins. That's my take. So Sally, I'm going to hand off the show to you for these last 20 minutes. We want to go through some personal story segment for the whole group. What's on your mind to pick one another's brain?
All right. Well, yeah, I was just thinking, it's the off season. We don't have a ton going on. We should maybe do a couple little lifestyle segments, get to know each other a little better. So Bryant always has the best stories.
Yes, he does.
So
and we got to get to him about what went down on Twitter earlier today. So,
well, do you want to talk about that first? Because if he might need to go.
All right. Yeah.
On Twitter.
When are you leaving tonight? Don't you need to get going out?
Yeah, not so. I got time.
Oh, okay. Being real,
party don't start.
Playing real coy.
He doesn't kiss and he doesn't kiss and tell.
Yeah, why haven't we got an invitation to your event coming up here in Minnesota?
Y'all talking about that boat?
Why didn't you tell
Why
us?
would somebody book me for that? Like, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, but yeah, I seen that. I just found out about it like 2 or 3 days ago, and I'm like, "Are you for real?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "On Lake Minnetonka."
As long as Fred Smoot's not there, I think it's okay.
Byron Chamberlain and is it
Robert Griffith?
Yeah.
Robert Griffin, yeah.
Yeah. So you're gonna go?
Yeah, I'm going.
Okay. I mean, I'm not buying my $125 ticket if you're not gonna be there.
I'm going. That's how much the tickets cost?
Yes.
Yeah, I got to know that.
Plus alcohol, cash.
We just got to
bar.
say we know
okay.
someone.
Highway robbery. It's gonna cost me $300 with an Uber to get there. Jeez.
Right.
I'm actually out of town that I'll be in Chicago that day. But if you're here on that Saturday, B-Mac, then we should plan all to get together with Bleav in Vikings just for dinner or drinks or something.
Yeah, I'm here. I'll leave till that Sunday.
Okay. Well, if you're free on the Saturday, probably earlier, because you'll probably want to hit the Minnesota nightlife. But I know Dustin, you're in South Dakota, but
Well,
Sally,
I'm coming
you're
up
local.
for a charity event on that Saturday. Boulder options, but yeah, I'll be around.
Okay.
So you're gonna do the righteous stuff in the day and then the dirty stuff at night.
I guess so.
Yeah, isn't that how it goes?
At night or during the day?
Get in between the sheets at night for sure.
All
right. All right. Well, let's talk. Okay. So I'm just curious, everyone tell your story. What is your favorite Vikings moment, either from a game you went to or just watched on TV? What is something that just still makes you happy to think about?
Joe,
Go on.
Mr. Positivity, why don't you start?
Yeah, Joe, you.
I still tear up watching is 2009. I think it was week 4.
I said happy.
Oh, San Fran.
He knows it. So it's week 4, and you guys have been winning, but it wasn't like, Favre hadn't really done it in the preseason, so he was rusty. He was basically just dumping the ball off to Percy a lot, and he, I still remember the play-by-play call. Favre evades pressure, rolls out, throws it to Greg Lewis, like the scream, the catch, which was one of the most amazing catches of all time,
Right.
to get both of those toes in. And that was the moment when I was like, this is real. Favre's on the Vikings. He's bringing the magic I hated for so long. And it's just something still that gets me all misty eyed when I watch it. And so other than that, a lot of my really favorite Vikings memories come down to, going to training camp and stuff with my dad, male bonding stuff that makes me uncomfortable. So
one of the best parts about that game, or that touchdown too, so I was in that end zone on that side.
No way.
The touchdown, like it happens and it's a touchdown, and so everyone goes nuts, but then they review it and then they confirm that it's a touchdown, so you get to go nuts twice. So that to me was the best part of that.
Bryant, what was that like for you guys on the side?
Yeah, we never talked
Right,
about
that was
Brian.
big. I kind of knew that's what he was going to say when he said like before week. He said 2009, because in my mind I was already thinking that. But at first when he said 2009, I thought he was going to another direction. But
Me too.
that game, yeah, that was a big like clutch last minute play. So that did stick in my mind. That was actually what I thought about originally.
What was that like for you guys? Like, could you believe it? Did you know for sure that it
I didn't know for
legit?
sure. So the replay, because it looked like, to me, I couldn't tell if he was in or out from where I was at, because he was so far downfield. And there was a lot of traffic back there too, so I couldn't really see. And he was towards the end of the end zone, so I wasn't even sure. So once the replay confirmed it, it was a celebration.
Yeah.
Oh, so awesome.
Ron, what's the top of your list?
So
Ron,
I have a
one,
lot
two,
of them, and I'll go a little off the cuff on one. So I go back to and this is a game that I unfortunately was not able to watch. So I'll just get to that here in a second. The 2005 playoff game at Lambeau. So the Randy Moss Moon game. So I was on a cruise, or on my way, or we were at the dock in New Orleans, and we get there and I'm like, all right, I'm going to find a bar, watch this game, whatever. They did not have Fox on the boat. We haven't left yet, so I'm sitting there and I'm pissed off. Like, we make our way to just a bar because hoping that they're going to find it. We end up surrounded by about 50 Packer fans, and there's a handful of us Vikings fans, but the game's not on TV. So and this is back again, 2005, so early on in the text messaging phase, right? So I texted two of my buddies back at home, like, you guys got to give me updates of this game, like, as it happens, just so I'm got my bases covered. So sure enough, the first text I get, and this is early, like right, the game just started, and I see broken play, Culpepper rolls out, dumps off Mo Williams, 70-yard touchdown. And I'm like, bullshit, like, no way that happened. And then so I announce in the bar, 7-0 Vikings, and then Vikings score again quickly, 14-0 Vikings, get a field goal, 17-0 Vikings. And now I'm really pissing off these Packer fans. They have no idea. They don't believe me. They think I'm full of shit. I think the Packers get a field goal. And then they're like, oh, you don't announce that. You guys weren't believing me for anything. So then finally we go to dinner, and at this point we take off. And dinners on cruises are supposed to be formal, right? So it's very we're sitting there, and again, I'm just itching, like, what is going on with this game? And so I'm getting text messages all throughout, and we're sitting with another family that we're now just meeting. And then I hear like the play-by-play of the Randy Moss touchdown, the pretend moon, and Joe Buck is, whatever in his own head.
Mhm.
And so finally I get back and I'm able to see the highlights. And so at this point I know what happens. I'm at the U of M, so I have a lot of Packer fans who are there too. The U of M here, not Miami. So, so I was, calling them all and just rubbing it in and whatnot. So that to me is I guess my most unique Viking story, because again, I've had a lot of good ones and I've had a lot of bad ones, but that one's one that stands out for one of the most memorable games that I wasn't able to see, but I still know like the back of my hand what happened. And here we are 16 years later.
Did your family learn to never book a vacation
I was gonna say.
before the Super Bowl again?
Or
So-
one that values formal wear at dinner versus
I think-
television.
I think they know that now.
Okay,
Even though I
okay.
remember, so I was very against going on this cruise. I was like, I don't want to go. And they're like, well, you have to. It was whatever. My sister was graduating nursing school or something at the time. So, I think I was 18, 19 or something, whatever. I was younger. So I didn't have much to say, but yeah, it was very, ironically, it was leaving from New Orleans. And then a few months later, Katrina hit New Orleans. So,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, but
Yeah.
it's again, just a unique look at it. But I still remember vividly the text messages coming through on my old T9 phone, looking at it and not believing it. And sure enough, that's what was happening.
Is it my turn, Sally?
Yeah, Dustin, your turn.
I think so outside of moments or memories that I have with my children, my wife and my mother, and plug your ears, like some sexual moments or memories, the best feeling I've ever had in my body was the miracle, because I was there and it was the pandemonium, and I've never felt a state of disbelief in my life. So sports wise, that probably tops the cake solely for the fact that I was there. LeBron James has given me dozens of moments that are comparable, at least at home in my living room. But I think broadly,
Actually,
I think broadly, Adrian Peterson's rise to power did a lot to how I looked at football, because probably like the rest of yous, I was all about throwing the ball, airing it out, and I wasn't pleased when we had Adrian to begin with, because I wanted us to finally get a quarterback. But when I start to realize how deadly he was and how fun he was to watch, it really transformed the way I looked at football, whether it was running the ball, which is frowned upon now, or playing defense, which we didn't do a lot of then. It kind of transformed my mindset of football. And then there's other ones. There's a very severely underrated game in the 1997 playoffs where the Vikings came back against the Giants in the Meadowlands. And nobody ever really talks about that, but it was incredible. It was Cunningham before Vikings fans knew who Cunningham was, because he came off the bench to replace Brad Johnson that game, and they won. They got slaughtered by the Niners the next week, but when doesn't that happen? But yeah, there are several others. I know that there is a lot of pessimism around our fan base and the times that we choke it away, but I am grateful for oodles of Vikings memories. Sally, you're up.
I kind of have a lot of mixed feelings about the miracle. Obviously it was great in the moment, but I think for me, it raised my expectations way too much for the next game, because I started believing, because that really shouldn't have happened, right? Like the coverage was blown. So I'm like, okay, somebody's finally looking out for us. The Super Bowl's at home. I thought like the stars were aligning. This is why we suffered for so long. This is going to happen.
Same
so
here.
Me,
That's why I booked my
can't
trip to Philly.
yeah, I can't look back at that now and really feel happy. But something I will always feel happy about is 2016, the home opener of US Bank Stadium, home opener. When the schedule was released, I'm pretty sure we all dreaded that we were opening our beautiful new stadium against the Packers. It was so much anxiety.
I was there.
Yeah, it was so much anxiety. Like, if they lose their very first game here and it's to the Packers, we are never going to hear the end of this.
yeah.
Ever. And so I just remember being so stressed for 6 months or something. And then, the game, it was really, it was back and forth. It went down to the wire who was going to win. Teddy had been injured before, remembers, in the training camp. So there was so much uncertainty of what was going to happen. And then so to watch that game, it was great. I think Trey Waynes had picked off Aaron.
Yep.
And that did it. And it was just beautiful. I'll never forget it.
I have a funny off the field memory of I think it was the last training camp in Mankato, and I was walking back to the parking lot where you parked if you got a press pass, and I was looking at my phone reading that Linval just got his extension,
Mhm.
and I see him dipping by on like a brand new Vespa, and he was going really fast, and he tried to take a corner and just at like 35 miles per hour just biffed and like rolled, and I like ran over like I'm gonna help this dude. He's gigantic, and I'm not small either. He got up and he said, "You didn't see shit." And just like I was like, dude, I'm literally looking at your contract extension. Like, what if it could have been the end of it?
He's clumsy, huh?
Yeah, well, he was like, you didn't see. I was like, I'm not gonna run up to Spielman. You don't have to worry about it.
Remember when he ran out of the tunnel though, and he tripped over the camera guy?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he's a klutz.
It's got to be hard to carry that much weight around when you're just that size.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and not tall like Bryant.
All right, Sally, we got time for one more.
Oh, should we do rapid fire? Okay,
Ooh.
so we'll do it quick then. Which Vikings kicker gives you the most nightmares? I guess it's only really two answers, but
Gary Anderson for me, hands down, because how do you go perfect all year long and then, oh my God, yeah. For me, I was in the formidable years. I was 11 or 12, whatever it was at that time, and so just starting to fall in love with football and had my heart ripped out at a young age. I guess it teaches you teaches you how to be a Minnesota sports fan. So.
Character building.
Blair Walsh, without a doubt.
Mine is Bleav, because again, like some of you, as I was at that game, and the only way that I knew it was missed based on my angle was the way that Richard Sherman started running and looking happy. And I was like,
everyone was cheering.
I was like, why the hell is he happy?
Yeah.
And I was like, but here's the deal. I've told this story before, and I'll tell it real quick. It was such a close field goal that even me, the Vikings, like feeling of the cynic, I didn't think there was any way. I didn't even think about him missing the field goal because it was so close. I didn't think, like, what if he misses it like I usually do now? But it was so close that I didn't even think about him missing it. I started thinking about, all right, we're going to play the Cardinals or Panthers. Yeah.
27 yards.
Yeah. So I used to be one of those dudes that only smoked cigarettes when I was like at the bar or drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making this up. After he missed that kick, and then every kick the next year subsequently with other kickers, I had to go outside to smoke when we kicked field goals. And from all I can tell, I'll probably be dead in 2 years. He didn't just ruin that period. I have like a phobia of Vikings field goal kickers kicking field goals. I mean, Dan Bailey came here, was the second most accurate kicker in NFL history, and then all of a sudden just was terrible. Like I don't understand it.
Brian,
we'll have to open that can of worms another time because I think we have feelings.
Brian's smirking.
No, I'm just laughing at his response.
All right, fair enough.
You had Longwell. Longwell never let us down. So.
Longwell, when I first got there, Gary was there though. But yeah, Longwell. He was there.
Oh yeah, Gary came back, didn't he? Or was that Morton?
That was Morton.
Are you sure it wasn't Morton Anderson, Bryant?
No, Gary was there when I first came in. Gary, he's like from Australia or something.
Yeah, he was there.
Yeah,
I thought you meant Morton Anderson retired and then returned to the league, because he definitely did. And he rocked that one bar. He had that one bar, like kicker helmet, like they had back
Peanuts.
I guess Gary I forgot that Gary came back.
Gary was like 40 or 41 or something when I got there. Gary was up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more, Sally.
Well, I didn't answer. I'm gonna go off the out of the box, and I'm gonna say Daniel Carlson. Because he was so good. What was he, a 5th round pick? And I went to Lambeau that day. It was so hot. I had so much sunburn, and that was the worst game to just sit there. I mean, leaving with a tie in any game is awful, but it was just, So then to see the poor kid get cut the next day after his second game and then go find happiness elsewhere, it stings. It really does. But that goes off of what Joe just said. With kickers sucking, we'll have to talk about that another time because I have my theories. Another question. Okay, cool. Well, let's see.
Last one and quick for the responses.
Quick responses, just no explanation. Who is your biggest disappointment? One player.
All time or
all time?
Ooh, that's a hard one. This is probably not the right answer for me for all time, but Michael Bennett, maybe. I liked him a lot.
Disappointing?
The running back.
Yeah, but he was decent for
Yeah, I just thought he was gonna
He
be
had a
like,
good old line in front of him.
Robert Smith 2.0, and he had Olympian track speed. He had like 3 games in a row with 70-yard touchdowns, but
Yeah.
I just thought, man, the speed that he had alongside Moss and Carter and stuff. I'm sure there's a much better answer. But
Mine is, so there's a bunch, but every fan base has a bunch when it comes to draft picks. Mine is Matt Khalil, only because it looked like we had the left tackle, kind of in the immediacy after Bryant figured out once again. And the fact that he was so damn good in year one, and then it's like, what the hell happened, left me. And I kept holding on, thinking, all right, this is going to be the game he gets back. And I thought that for like 2-3 years, and I was moronic. Ron, who's yours?
Mine, I would probably say Ryan Cook, in the sense that when we traded Culpepper, and that's what we use for it. So I wasn't a fan of that at all at the time. And granted, we've had a lot of disappointments, but that was the one where right off the bat I was not happy with, and seemingly he didn't perform well, whether it was playing out of position or not. So Brian, I don't know if you have any opinions on him as a player, if he was just out of position or not. But
they moved him around the center, and he was a right tackle.
Yeah, he was everywhere.
I feel like they just moved him around too much.
they TJ Clemmings and him.
Sally,
Turnstile.
Oh my God, it just completely escaped. Oh, I'm gonna go Ponder. No explanation needed.
Okay. Hey, Bryant, can you work on like a Patrick Peterson or somebody from the current team, or is that
Tom somebody?
Is that tricky to do for the current players?
No,
I don't want to.
Tom.
I've been talking to Patrick Peterson about coming on a network show randomly,
okay.
so I can maybe.
Brian, are you gonna go to
help you.
training camp and hang out?
Doesn't sound
Am I
like
coming to training camp?
Like, will you come hang out like 1 or 2 days? I don't know, since you have friends.
Maybe. I never thought about it, but it's
Well, I
possible.
was just thinking maybe I could set up like a live show. We could do it like a bar or something after training camp one day. If you would maybe be down for that.
So
But
that's
don't
like
call me right now.
That's like the end of July.
Yeah.
Beginning of
Yeah,
August.
it's August. No need to let me know now.
I'm
It'll be
open
fun.
to it though.
If you're in town the middle of June or whatever, like I don't know, Dustin, if you're planning on being in town or not, but at least the Bleav crew, get together and in between your busy weekend and just have some drinks or something. And I actually meet, not just through Zoom.
We need some promotional photos for this Instagram
Right.
we're trying to get going at the very least. So at least come take a couple selfies.
Joe and I can hang out and drink ice water because
I know Shirley Temples.
Yeah, we're miserable ex-drunks.
Right.
Oh man.
All right, well, Joe, thanks for stopping by tonight. We hope that
No problem. I had a great time with you guys.
Oh well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thanks for joining, Joe.
We'll work on a current player guest. I'll try to coordinate with McKinney throughout the week. Otherwise, we'll have another analysis show just like this. That will actually, I should have said this out of the gate. 2 weeks from now, I will be on a family vacation next week, so that'll be 2 weeks is when we'll set up the next show. Brian, you got to get 2 weeks to figure it out.
All right, so 2 weeks. Okay.
Yes, sir. All right, that's all we got for tonight. Skol Vikings.
All right, later, guys.
Have fun, Brian.
Later, folks.
All right.
Keep us posted on the Instagram.
I will.
Bye.
Later.
All right, see ya.
Later.